There, I was standing in the pouring rain outside my childhood home at 11:30 at night, soaked to the bone, watching my bedroom light go out through the window. Thunder crashed overhead as I realized my 21 years of being the responsible son just ended because of one lie my sister Emma told our mother. I was holding my keys, but the locks had already been changed. My mother's words still echoed, "Get out of my house and don't come back." I didn't know that in exactly 20 minutes, everything would change when Emma made one devastating mistake. Earlier that evening, around 7 o'clock, I had arrived home from my shift at Patterson's Auto Parts, exhausted but buzzing with excitement. My manager had just promoted me to assistant manager, which meant a $2 raise and actual benefits for the first time in my life. At 21, this felt like winning the lottery. I had been working 2 jobs since turning 18 to help support our family after Dad lost his construction job due to a herniated disc in his lower back. The injury happened when a scaffold collapsed at a job site, leaving him unable to lift anything heavier than 20 pounds. Workers' compensation barely covered his medical bills, let alone our mortgage payments. So I became the family breadwinner by default. Monday through Friday, I worked the morning shift at a local warehouse loading trucks from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Then I would rush across town to Patterson's, where I worked the evening shift until 10 p.m. Weekends meant overtime hours wherever I could find them. I had deferred my college acceptance to State University twice, telling myself it was just temporary until Dad got back on his feet. Emma, my 19-year-old sister, had always resented what she called my golden child status with our parents. While I worked myself to exhaustion, she attended community college part-time and spent most evenings out with friends. She frequently came home past midnight on weekdays, reeking of alcohol and cigarettes, but Mom never confronted her about it. What our parents didn't know was that Emma had been secretly dating Marcus Rodriguez, a 25-year-old with a lengthy criminal record. I had discovered their relationship 3 months earlier when I saw them together at a gas station across town. Marcus had been arrested twice for theft, and once for assault. Information I learned from my buddy Tyler, who worked dispatch for the county sheriff's office. I had covered for Emma countless times over the past year. When she came home drunk, I helped her sneak upstairs and made excuses to Mom about why she looked sick the next morning. When she needed money for what she claimed were textbooks, I lent her cash from my savings. When Mom asked where Emma was during her frequent disappearances, I crafted believable stories about study groups and part-time job interviews. The evening started like any other Tuesday. Mom had prepared her famous meatloaf with mashed potatoes, and we gathered around the kitchen table at 7:30. Dad sat carefully in his special cushioned chair, wincing slightly as he settled into position. The pain medication made him drowsy, but he always insisted on family dinner time. Davis got promoted today. I announced, unable to contain my pride any longer. Assistant manager at Patterson's. They're giving me a key to the building and everything. Mom's face lit up with genuine joy. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. You've worked so hard for this." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Your father and I are so proud of you." Dad nodded slowly, his eyes brightening despite the medication fog. "That's my boy. Always knew you had management potential." Emma picked at her food silently, her jaw clenched tight. I could feel the tension radiating from her side of the table, but I tried to ignore it. This was my moment, and I had earned it through months of 16-hour workdays and countless sacrifices. After dinner, I retreated to my bedroom to call Sarah, my girlfriend of 8 months. Sarah Williams worked as a receptionist at a veterinary clinic across town, and we had been planning to move in together once my financial situation improved. The promotion meant we could finally afford a decent apartment instead of the cramped studio places we had been looking at. "Davis, this is amazing!" Sarah's voice bubbled with excitement through the phone. "Does this mean we can start looking at those 2-bedroom places on Maple Street?" "I think so," I replied, pulling out my notebook where I tracked every penny of our household expenses. With the raise, I'll be bringing home an extra $320 a month. If we split rent on a place for $1,200, I can still send Mom $500 for the mortgage and keep enough for our groceries and utilities. We spent nearly an hour discussing floor plans and neighborhoods, our voices hushed with the excitement of young people planning their first real step toward independence. I had $1,500 saved in my checking account, enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on a decent place. While I was on the phone with Sarah, Emma was listening from the hallway outside my door. She had developed a habit of eavesdropping on my conversations, though I never understood why until later. That night, she heard me mention my savings account balance, and something dark shifted in her expression. Emma was in serious trouble, though I had no idea how serious. Marcus had been pressuring her for weeks to help him with what he called business opportunities. These opportunities involved selling stolen merchandise, and Marcus owed money to some very dangerous people. Emma needed cash fast, and she had been scheming for weeks about how to get it. After I finished my call with Sarah around 10:15, I headed to the bathroom to brush my teeth. Emma seized her opportunity. She slipped into my room and opened the desk drawer where I kept important documents. My college acceptance letter from State University lay on top, the one I had read and reread dozens of times before deciding to defer again. Emma tore the letter into several pieces, then carried the fragments to the kitchen trash can. But she wasn't finished. She took a $20 bill from Mom's purse, which always sat on the counter by the coffee maker, and carefully tucked it into the inner pocket of my work jacket. When I returned to my room 10 minutes later, Emma was waiting in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. Her performance was Academy Award worthy as she stumbled toward Mom and Dad's bedroom, sobbing dramatically. "Mom, I need to tell you something terrible about Davis." She wailed loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. Mom emerged from the bedroom in her bathrobe, instantly alert with maternal concern. "What's wrong, sweetheart? What happened?" "I caught Davis stealing money from your purse." Emma gasped between sobs. "And when I confronted him about it, he went crazy. He said college was a waste of money, and he would rather see our family struggle than waste cash on education. Then, he tore up his acceptance letter and threw it in the trash." Mom's face went pale. "That can't be true. Davis wouldn't steal from us." "Check the trash can," Emma insisted. "The letter is right there. And check his jacket pocket. I saw him put the $20 there before I said anything." My stomach dropped as I heard this conversation from my bedroom. I rushed into the hallway where Mom was already marching toward the kitchen, with Emma trailing behind her. "Mom, whatever she told you isn't true," I said, my voice cracking with confusion and fear. But Mom was already pulling the torn acceptance letter pieces from the trash can, her hands shaking as she tried to fit them together. Then she walked to the hall closet, where my work jacket hung, and reached into the inner pocket. Her fingers closed around the $20 bill. "How could you do this to us?" Mom's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the force of absolute betrayal. "After everything we've done for you, after all the sacrifices your father and I have made you steal from us." "Mom, I didn't take that money. Emma is lying to you about everything." I could hear the desperation in my own voice, but the more frantic I sounded, the guiltier I appeared. Dad had emerged from the bedroom by then, moving slowly, but with purpose. He looked at the evidence in Mom's hands, then at Emma's tear-stained face, then at me, standing there with my mouth hanging open. "Son, just tell us the truth," Dad said quietly. "If you needed money, you could have asked us." "I didn't take anything," I insisted. "Emma is setting me up. She tore up that letter and planted the money. I don't know why, but she's lying about all of this." Emma's sobs grew louder. "He called me pathetic, Mom. He said I was dead weight, and that he was tired of carrying me. He said the family would be better off if I just disappeared." Those words cut through Mom like a knife. Emma had always been her baby, her precious youngest child who could do no wrong. Hearing that I had supposedly attacked Emma's self-worth triggered every protective instinct Mom possessed. "How dare you speak to your sister that way?" Mom shouted, her voice rising to a pitch I had never heard before. "How dare you steal from this family and then lie about it to our faces. Linda, let's all calm down and talk through this rationally. Dad attempted, but his words were weak and unconvincing. The pain medication made it difficult for him to think clearly, and the stress was making his back spasms worse. There's nothing rational about this, Richard, Mom snapped. Our son is a thief and a liar, and he's been manipulating all of us. Look at this evidence. Look at your daughter's tears. What more proof do you need? I felt the walls closing in around me. Every word I spoke seemed to make things worse. Every denial sounded like another lie. Emma stood behind Mom, her tears flowing freely, but I caught a glimpse of something cold and calculating in her eyes when Mom wasn't looking. You have exactly 15 minutes to pack a bag and get out of this house. Mom declared, her voice steady now with absolute finality. I will not have a thief living under my roof. Linda, maybe we should sleep on this decision, Dad suggested weakly. Davis is still our son. Davis made his choice when he decided to steal from us and lie about it, Mom replied. Now I'm making mine. Choose Richard. Either he leaves tonight or I will. Dad looked at me with genuine anguish in his eyes. I could see him struggling between his love for me and his fear of losing Mom. The medication had left him vulnerable and confused, unable to process the rapid escalation of events. I'm sorry, son, he whispered. I think you should stay at a friend's house tonight until we can sort this all out. But Mom wasn't finished. While I stood there in shock, she was already on the phone with Tom Henderson, our neighbor, who ran a 24-hour locksmith service. Within 30 minutes, our front door had a completely new deadbolt, and I was standing outside with only my wallet, my phone, and the clothes on my back. The rain had started as a light drizzle around 10 p.m., but by the time I was locked out at 11:30, it had become a full thunderstorm. Water streamed down my face as I stared up at my bedroom window, where the light had just been turned off. Emma's silhouette appeared briefly in the window before disappearing behind closed curtains. The walk to Jake Thompson's apartment took me through 3 miles of winding suburban streets, past strip malls and gas stations that looked entirely different in the middle of a storm. Jake had been my closest friend since 7th grade, the only person who truly understood the weight I carried as my family's primary breadwinner. By the time I reached Jake's building, water was squishing in my shoes with every step. My jeans clung to my legs, and my t-shirt had become transparent. I looked like a drowned rat as I rang the buzzer for apartment 2B at 12:45 a.m. Davis, what the hell are you doing here? Jake's voice crackled through the intercom, thick with sleep, but instantly alert when he recognized my voice. I need somewhere to crash tonight, I replied, trying to keep my teeth from chattering. Family emergency. The door buzzed open immediately. Jake Thompson stood waiting in his doorway, wearing Michigan State sweatpants and a confused expression. At 22, Jake worked as a mechanic at the Ford dealership downtown and rented a modest 1-bedroom apartment that always smelled faintly of motor oil and pizza. Dude, you look like you just crawled out of a lake, Jake said, grabbing towels from his bathroom cabinet. Get out of those wet clothes before you catch pneumonia. Jake tossed me a dry University of Michigan hoodie and a pair of basketball shorts, while I explained what had happened. As I recounted Emma's accusations and Mom's ultimatum, Jake's expression shifted from concern to disgust. Emma's been planning something like this for months, Jake said, shaking his head. I've seen the way she looks at you during family gatherings. Pure jealousy, man. She can't stand that you're the responsible one. You really think she would lie about something this serious? I asked, even though I knew the answer. Davis, I've watched Emma manipulate your parents since we were kids, Jake replied. Remember when she convinced your mom that I was the one who broke the living room lamp? She was standing right there when it happened, but somehow it became my fault, because I was the bad influence friend. Jake was right. Emma had a pattern of deflecting responsibility and blaming others for her mistakes. But this felt different. This wasn't about a broken lamp or missed curfew. This was character assassination designed to destroy my relationship with my family permanently. You can stay here as long as you need, Jake continued, We'll figure out how to clear your name and get you back home where you belong. I tried calling Sarah from Jake's couch, but my calls went straight to voicemail. I sent her a text explaining the situation. Family crisis tonight. Got kicked out over false accusations. Staying at Jake's. We'll call you tomorrow and explain everything. Sarah didn't respond, which struck me as odd. Usually she replied to texts within minutes, even late at night. But I was too emotionally exhausted to worry about it properly. I borrowed one of Jake's pillows and a blanket from his hall closet, then collapsed on his sectional sofa around 2:30 a.m. Sleep came in restless waves, interrupted by thunder, and the constant replay of the evening's events in my head. Emma's tears had seemed so genuine. Mom's anger had felt so absolute. Dad's betrayal had cut the deepest, because I understood his impossible position. Meanwhile, back at the house, Emma was celebrating her victory in the most reckless way possible. Believing herself completely safe from discovery, she grabbed her phone and typed out a message to Marcus. Finally got rid of the golden boy. Mom chose me for once. Had to lie my ass off, but totally worth it. Davis is probably crying in the rain somewhere, haha. Time to get that money from his account since I know his PIN. Emma thought she was texting privately to Marcus, but she had forgotten about the family's smart TV system. Dad had connected all their phones to the living room television 6 months earlier, so they could easily share photos and videos during family movie nights. The feature automatically displayed text notifications on the big screen whenever someone received or sent messages. Dad couldn't sleep after the confrontation. His back pain was flaring from the stress, and guilt gnawed at him for not defending me more strongly. He had taken an extra pain pill around midnight and wandered into the living room to watch late-night television, hoping mindless programming would help him relax. The living room was dark, except for the glow from the 55-inch Samsung screen, when Emma's text message appeared in bright white letters across the bottom. Dad blinked several times, certain the medication was making him hallucinate. But the message remained there for the full 10-second display period before disappearing. Dad fumbled for the TV remote and navigated to the messaging app, where Emma's confession was permanently saved in the family's shared message history. He read it 3 times, his heart sinking deeper with each repetition. His innocent son was wandering the streets in a thunderstorm, while his daughter laughed about successfully destroying his life. The weight of his betrayal crashed down on Dad like a physical blow. He had chosen to believe Emma's lies over my denials. He had watched me get thrown out into the worst storm of the year, rather than stand up for what was right. The medication fog lifted as adrenaline flooded his system, bringing painful clarity to the devastating mistake he had just made. Dad screenshot the message and began scrolling through Emma's recent text history, discovering layers of deception he never could have imagined. Dad spent the next 3 hours in the living room methodically documenting Emma's digital trail of lies and manipulation. The smart TV's messaging interface allowed him to scroll through weeks of conversations, revealing a web of deceit that made him physically nauseated. Emma's text conversations with Marcus painted a disturbing picture of criminal activity and callous disregard for family. She had been helping Marcus fence stolen goods for months, using our family's reputation and home address as cover for their operations. Messages from 2 weeks earlier showed Emma bragging about how stupid our parents were for trusting her completely. Even more devastating were Emma's conversations with her friend Brittany Carson, where she detailed her long-term plan to discredit me with Mom and Dad. Davis thinks he's so perfect with his 2 jobs and college plans, Emma had written. But Mom's baby girl can do no wrong. I just need the right opportunity to knock him off his pedestal permanently. Dad discovered that Emma had been systematically stealing from our family for months. Small amounts from Mom's purse, typically $10 to $20 at a time. Larger amounts from my wallet when I left it unattended. She had even taken groceries donated by our church and sold them to neighbors for cash, telling Mom she had distributed them to needy families as an act of charity. The bank account theft was the most serious crime. Emma had learned my PIN by watching me enter it at the ATM and had been making unauthorized withdrawals for the past month. $837 had been stolen from my savings account in increments small enough to avoid triggering fraud alerts. Money I had earned through grueling double shifts and weekend overtime money I needed for college tuition and the apartment with Sarah. Dad found text messages showing Emma had been feeding Mom carefully crafted lies about my character for weeks. She told Mom I had been acting strange and secretive lately. She claimed I made disparaging comments about Dad's disability when he wasn't around. She suggested I was becoming bitter and resentful about supporting the family financially. These planted seeds of doubt had prepared Mom to believe Emma's ultimate lie. By the time Emma made her false accusations that Tuesday night, Mom's perception of me had already been poisoned by weeks of subtle manipulation. The most heartbreaking discovery came in Emma's messages to her friend, Jessica Martinez. Emma had written, "Davis is such a pathetic people-pleaser. He'll sacrifice everything for this family because he thinks it makes him special. But Mom loves me more, and I'm about to prove it. When I'm done with him, he'll be out on the street, and I'll have access to all his money." Dad realized his own weakness, and Linda's blind favoritism had created a monster. Emma felt entitled to destroy my life simply because she was jealous of the respect I had earned through hard work and sacrifice. We had enabled her selfishness by constantly making excuses for her behavior and protecting her from consequences. At 6 a.m., Dad could no longer bear the weight of what he had discovered. He drove through the early morning drizzle to Jake's apartment complex, his hands shaking as he knocked on the door. When I appeared still wearing Jake's borrowed clothes and looking like I had aged 5 years overnight, Dad broke down completely. "I'm so sorry, son," he whispered, pulling me into a hug that surprised us both. "I should have believed you. I should have protected you. I failed you as a father." Dad showed me the screenshots on his phone, and I felt a mixture of vindication and devastation. I had been right about Emma's manipulation, but seeing the calculated cruelty of her plan written out in black and white was more painful than I had expected. "She's been stealing from your bank account." Dad continued showing me the transaction records Emma had shared with Marcus. $837 over the past month. And there's so much more, Davis. She's been planning this destruction for weeks. Jake whistled low as he read over my shoulder. "This is seriously messed up, Mr. Peterson. Emma's not just lying. She's committing actual crimes. What do we do now?" I asked Dad, though part of me already knew the answer would disappoint me. "We go home and confront your mother with this evidence," Dad replied. "We make Emma confess to everything and return your money. We fix this family before it's too late." But as we talked, my phone rang with a call that would complicate everything further. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, and I answered eagerly, expecting comfort and support from the woman I loved. "Davis, I can't do this anymore." Sarah's voice was cold and distant completely, unlike her usual warmth. "I know what kind of person you really are now, and I can't be with someone like that." "What are you talking about?" I asked, confusion replacing relief. "Your sister called me last night after you got kicked out," Sarah continued. "She told me everything, Davis, about how you've been cheating on me with multiple women, about how you've been using me for money and planning to break up with me as soon as you found someone better." My world tilted sideways. "Sarah Emma is lying to you, just like she lied to my parents. She's been setting me up for weeks. She showed me proof, Davis. Screenshots of conversations where you called me desperate and clingy. Messages where you bragged about manipulating me into paying for dates and giving you money for your family emergencies." "Those screenshots are fake," I insisted, but I could hear the doubt creeping into my own voice. Emma's manipulation was more extensive than I had imagined. "I trusted you completely," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I thought we were building a future together, but you were just playing games with my heart. Don't call me again." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. Emma hadn't just destroyed my relationship with my family. She had systematically dismantled every important relationship in my life, isolating me completely before delivering the final blow. Jake stared at my phone, as if it had personally offended him. This is insane, Davis. Emma's not just lying about one thing. She's running a full-scale character assassination campaign. Dad's face had gone ashen as he processed the scope of Emma's manipulations. We need to get home and stop this before she destroys anything else, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. What if Mom doesn't believe us even with the evidence? I asked. The question hung in the air because we all knew the answer. Mom's favoritism toward Emma ran so deep that she might dismiss even video evidence as somehow fabricated. We decided to investigate further before returning home. Dad suggested we start by checking my social media accounts and workplace to see how far Emma's lies had spread. What we discovered was worse than my most paranoid fears. Emma had created several fake social media profiles over the past month, using them to spread carefully crafted rumors about me throughout our community. One account, pretending to be a concerned neighbor, posted about suspicious activity at our house, involving young men coming and going at odd hours. Another fake profile claimed to have witnessed me selling drugs in the parking lot behind Patterson's Auto Parts. The most damaging posts suggested I had been embezzling money from my workplace to support a gambling addiction. Emma had included just enough real details about my work schedule and financial contributions to the family to make her lies believable. Several people from our neighborhood and my high school had already shared these posts, expressing shock and disappointment. She's been planning this for months, Jake said as we scrolled through the evidence. This isn't just sibling rivalry. This is sociopathic behavior. Dad called Patterson's Auto Parts and spoke with my manager, Gary Patterson himself. Gary assured Dad that my promotion was still secure and that he didn't believe any of the rumors circulating online. But he mentioned that 2 customers had specifically asked about my legal troubles the previous day. Your boy's got a good reputation here, Gary told Dad over the phone. But I need to know the truth about what's happening. If there's any validity to these accusations, I have to protect my business. Dad explained the situation honestly, and Gary agreed to ignore the social media rumors while we sorted out the family crisis. But the damage to my reputation was spreading faster than we could contain it. Next, we contacted State University to check on my enrollment status. The admissions office informed us that they had received a call the previous week from someone claiming to be Linda Peterson, requesting to withdraw my application for the spring semester. The caller had provided personal information about our family that convinced the staff member the request was legitimate. Emma's been systematically destroying every opportunity in your life. Dad said, his voice heavy with guilt and anger. She's not just jealous. She's trying to trap you in this town with no prospects so she can continue exploiting you. The pattern became clear as we investigated further. Emma had contacted my extended family members over the past month, sharing carefully edited versions of family conversations that painted me as abusive and unstable. Uncle Tom and Aunt Jennifer in Phoenix had stopped calling after Emma told them I was verbally attacking Mom about Dad's disability benefits. My cousin Michael in Denver, who had offered me a summer construction job, withdrew the offer after Emma convinced him I had developed a serious drug problem. She had told him I was stealing from the family to buy pills, and that Dad was too proud to admit the truth. She's been isolating you systematically, Jake observed, cutting off every support system and opportunity until you're completely dependent on the family for survival. But Emma's biggest mistake was getting greedy. Dad's investigation revealed that she hadn't just stolen my money. She had also been using Mom's credit cards for unauthorized purchases, always staying under the limits that would trigger fraud alerts. $560 in charges at various stores around town, all for items that never made it home. The credit card statements showed purchases at jewelry stores, expensive restaurants where Emma had taken Marcus on dates, and payments to a lawyer's office. Emma had been using Mom's credit to pay legal fees for Marcus's recent arrests, something our parents knew nothing about. We have enough evidence to press criminal charges, Dad said quietly. Identity theft, credit card fraud, bank fraud, filing false reports. Emma could go to prison for this. The realization sobered all of us. This wasn't just a family disagreement anymore. Emma had committed serious crimes, and her victims included not just me, but also Mom, and potentially dozens of businesses in our community. Before we involve the police, let's try one more approach, Dad suggested. Let's go home and give Emma a chance to confess voluntarily. Maybe seeing all this evidence will shock her into taking responsibility. But as we prepared to leave Jake's apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler Martinez, my friend at the sheriff's dispatch office. Davis, I hate to tell you this, but there's been some activity at your family's address that you should know about. Can you meet me for coffee? We met Tyler at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. Tyler looked uncomfortable as he spread police reports across our booth table. There have been 3 domestic disturbance calls to your address in the past 2 weeks, he said quietly. Someone's been calling in reports of loud arguments and potential violence. The reports described me as an aggressive young man who was threatening family members and possibly dealing drugs from the family home. The caller, who identified herself as a concerned neighbor, provided detailed descriptions of supposed incidents that never happened. The responding officers didn't find evidence of violence or drug activity, Tyler continued. But these reports are now part of your family's file. If there are any future incidents, they'll assume there's an ongoing pattern of problems. Emma had been building a case against me with local law enforcement, creating a paper trail that would support her claims if she ever needed police involvement. She was preparing to have me arrested if her other manipulations failed. This is beyond anything I imagined. Dad said, his hands trembling as he read the false reports. Emma's not just lying to family. She's involving law enforcement in her schemes. Tyler leaned forward conspiratorially. There's something else. We've had reports of stolen merchandise moving through your neighborhood. The detective division has been watching several houses, including yours. If there's any criminal activity connected to your family's address, everyone living there could face charges. The final piece of Emma's plan clicked into place. She wasn't just trying to discredit me with family and friends. She was setting me up to take the fall for her criminal activities with Marcus. If police discovered their stolen merchandise operation, I would be the obvious suspect, given all the false reports about my supposed drug dealing and aggressive behavior. Armed with overwhelming evidence of Emma's crimes, Dad and I returned to the family home around 2 p.m. The storm had passed, leaving the neighborhood looking washed and clean, but I felt like I was walking into a hurricane. We found Emma in our garage with Marcus Rodriguez, exactly where Tyler had suggested we might find criminal activity. The scene that greeted us confirmed our worst fears, and then some. Cardboard boxes filled with clearly stolen electronics lined the walls, laptop computers still in their retail packaging tablets, with inventory stickers, gaming systems that looked like they had been removed from store displays. Marcus was photographing the merchandise, while Emma organized items into categories for online sales. A notebook on Dad's workbench contained detailed lists of products with retail prices and planned selling prices. They had turned our family garage into a distribution center for stolen goods worth thousands of dollars. What the hell is going on here? Dad's voice carried an authority I hadn't heard since before his injury. His back pain seemed forgotten in the face of absolute fury. Emma dropped the tablet she was holding, her face cycling through surprise fear, and then calculated defiance. Dad, I can explain everything, she said, but her tone suggested she was already planning her next lie. Marcus stood up slowly, his posture deliberately intimidating. At 25, he was several inches taller than both Dad and me, with tattooed arms, and the kind of casual arrogance that came from a lifetime of criminal behavior. Explain what? Marcus said, stepping between Emma and us. We're just organizing some electronics that Emma bought online. Nothing illegal about reselling stuff you own. Dad pulled out his phone and showed them the screenshots of Emma's confessions. We know everything, Emma. The lies about Davis, the theft from his bank account, the fake social media posts, the false police reports. All of it. For a moment, Emma's carefully constructed facade cracked, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. But instead of showing remorse or fear, she seemed to grow more defiant. "You can't prove anything," she said, crossing her arms. "Those screenshots could be faked. And even if they're real, so what? Davis has been making my life miserable for years with his perfect son act. Everything I did was justified." Justified. I stepped forward, my voice rising. "You destroyed my relationship with Sarah. You got me kicked out of college. You've been stealing money I earned working 16-hour days to support this family. How is any of that justified?" "Because you think you're better than everyone," Emma shouted back. "St. Davis working his little jobs and playing the martyr. You made Mom and Dad think I was worthless compared to you. Well, guess what? You're not special. You're just a sucker who was easy to manipulate." Marcus moved closer to us, his hand moving to his back pocket, where I could see the outline of what looked like a weapon. "I think you need to back off and let Emma handle her family business." Dad ignored the threat and focused on Emma. "The police are already investigating stolen merchandise in this neighborhood. When they find this garage full of theft products, who do you think they're going to arrest?" "That's Davis's problem," Emma replied with a cold smile. "I've been documenting his suspicious behavior for weeks. His drug dealing, his violence, his criminal associates. When the police get here, they'll arrest him, not me." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Emma hadn't just been destroying my reputation randomly. She had been preparing to frame me for her own crimes. If Dad hadn't discovered her confession text, I would have walked into a trap that could have sent me to prison for years. Linda appeared in the garage doorway, drawn by the raised voices. She looked at the boxes of stolen merchandise, then at Emma standing defiantly next to Marcus, then at Dad and me holding evidence of Emma's betrayals. "What's happening here?" Mom asked, but her voice already carried a defensive tone that suggested she was preparing to protect Emma, regardless of the circumstances. "Your daughter has been running a criminal operation out of our garage," Dad said quietly. "She's also been systematically destroying Davis's life through lies and theft. Read these messages, Linda. See for yourself what Emma really thinks about this family." Mom read through the screenshots with growing horror, but when she looked up, her anger was directed at Dad and me, rather than at Emma. "How dare you invade your sister's privacy by reading her personal messages, and why are you trying to blame her for your own problems?" "Davis." I stared at Mom in disbelief. Even confronted with written confessions and physical evidence, she was still defending Emma and attacking me. "Mom," she admitted to lying about everything. "She stole money from my bank account. She's been planning to frame me for criminal charges. Emma makes mistakes sometimes, but she's not a criminal," Mom insisted. "And even if she did take some money, it was probably because she felt desperate and unappreciated in this house." Felt unappreciated. Dad's voice rose to a shout. "Linda, open your eyes. Emma has been committing felonies. She's put our home at risk for harboring stolen goods. She's destroyed our son's reputation and relationships based on complete lies. Davis brought this on himself with his attitude," Mom shot back. Maybe if he hadn't been so condescending and superior all the time, Emma wouldn't have felt driven to extreme measures. Standing in that garage, surrounded by evidence of Emma's crimes, and listening to Mom defend the indefensible, something fundamental broke inside me. For 21 years, I had sacrificed my own dreams and happiness to support a family that would never truly value my contributions. I had worked myself to exhaustion to pay their mortgage. I had given up college opportunities to keep them financially stable. I had covered for Emma's lies and mistakes countless times, always believing family loyalty was more important than justice. But family loyalty was supposed to work both ways. A real family would have investigated Emma's accusations before throwing me out in a storm. A real mother would have believed her innocent son over her lying daughter when presented with evidence. A real family wouldn't expect one member to sacrifice everything while protecting another member's right to commit crimes without consequences. You have a choice, Mom, I said, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside me. Either Emma faces real consequences for her crimes and makes full restitution for everything she's stolen, or I'm done with this family permanently. No more financial support. No more covering for her mistakes. No more being your scapegoat. You can't give me ultimatums in my own house, Mom replied angrily. You're right, I said. I can't. But I can choose whether to be part of a family that protects criminals and punishes victims. Emma has committed serious crimes that could send her to prison. If you want to enable that behavior, you can do it without me. Mom's face hardened into the same expression she had worn the night before when she threw me out. Fine. If you can't forgive family mistakes and want to be vindictive toward your own sister, then maybe you don't belong in this family. Marcus stepped forward aggressively. Sounds like the little boy got his feelings hurt. Maybe you should run along before this gets worse for you. But I wasn't the same person who had been manipulated and cast out the night before. Emma's betrayal had burned away my willingness to be a victim, and Mom's blind defense of criminal behavior had freed me from any obligation to sacrifice myself for people who didn't deserve it. Actually, Marcus, I think you're the one who should be worried, I replied calmly. Tyler Martinez at the sheriff's office told me they've been tracking stolen merchandise in this neighborhood. How long do you think it'll take them to connect you to this garage full of felony evidence? Marcus's confident demeanor wavered as he realized I had law enforcement connections he hadn't anticipated. Emma grabbed his arm possessively, but her own fear was beginning to show through her defiance. You wouldn't call the police on your own sister, Mom said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. Watch me, I replied, pulling out my phone. The silence that followed my threat stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Emma and Marcus exchanged nervous glances while Mom stared at me, as if seeing a stranger. Dad stood beside me, with his jaw set in determination, finally ready to stop enabling the toxicity that had poisoned our family. Davis put the phone away. Mom said, her voice taking on a pleading tone. We can work this out as a family. There's no need to involve outsiders. Emma made it involve outsiders when she filed false police reports about me. I replied, my finger hovering over Tyler's contact number. She involved outsiders when she destroyed my relationship with Sarah using fabricated evidence. She involved outsiders when she used our family's address for her criminal operation with Marcus. It wasn't supposed to go this far, Emma said suddenly, her defiance cracking. I just needed money to help Marcus with some legal problems. I wasn't trying to hurt you permanently. You weren't trying to hurt me permanently. I stared at my sister in amazement. Emma, you've been systematically destroying my life for months. You got me kicked out of college, ruined my reputation in the community, stole my money, broke up my relationship, and were planning to have me arrested for your crimes. What exactly did you think was going to happen to me? Marcus grabbed Emma's arm roughly. Shut up, Emma. Don't admit to anything. They can't prove we stole this stuff. Actually, we can, Dad said, holding up his phone. Emma documented everything in her text messages. She bragged about the thefts, the lies, the manipulation. She even sent photos of some stolen merchandise to her friends. For the first time since we had known him, Marcus looked genuinely scared. Emma, you didn't tell me you were keeping records of this stuff. I thought I could trust my friends, Emma whispered finally, understanding how completely she had incriminated herself. I made the call to Tyler Martinez, putting it on speaker so everyone could hear. Tyler, this is Davis Peterson. I'm at my family's home with evidence of the stolen merchandise operation you mentioned. The suspects are here now with the goods. Are you in immediate danger? Tyler asked, his voice shifting into official mode. I don't think so, but there's definitely criminal activity taking place. Can you send units to my address? Officers are already in your neighborhood, Tyler replied. We've been conducting surveillance based on tips about stolen goods distribution. They'll be there in 2 minutes. Mom's face went white as the reality of the situation hit her. Davis, you called the police on your own family. I called the police on criminals who happen to share my DNA, I corrected. There's a difference. Marcus started toward the garage exit, but Dad blocked his path. Despite his back injury, Dad had positioned himself strategically, and Marcus would have to physically attack him to escape. "Nobody's going anywhere," Dad said firmly. "We're all going to wait for the police and let them sort this out according to the law." "This is insane," Mom cried. "How can you do this to Emma? She's your daughter." "Emma did this to herself," Dad replied sadly. "We enabled her behavior for years, and now she's facing the natural consequences of her choices." Two sheriff's deputies arrived within minutes, followed quickly by a detective who was clearly familiar with the stolen merchandise investigation. Detective Sarah Coleman looked around the garage with satisfaction, as if finding exactly what she had expected. "We've been tracking this operation for weeks," Detective Coleman explained, as her team photographed the evidence. "The merchandise in this garage matches items stolen from electronics stores across 3 counties. This represents approximately $15,000 in retail theft." Emma and Marcus were arrested immediately. Marcus was charged with multiple felonies related to organized retail theft and possession of stolen property. Emma faced those same charges plus identity theft, bank fraud, and filing false police reports. Mom was questioned extensively, but ultimately not charged, as there was no evidence she knew about the criminal activities taking place in her own garage. However, she faced potential civil liability from victims of the theft ring, who might sue to recover their losses. Over the next several days, the scope of Emma and Marcus's operation became clear. They had been part of a larger network that stole merchandise from retail stores, then sold items through online marketplaces and social media. Emma's role involved providing storage space and helping to create false documentation for the stolen goods. The investigation also revealed that Emma had stolen a total of $1,362 from my bank account, not the $837 we had initially discovered. She had been more careful about covering her tracks in some transactions than others. My reputation in the community began to rehabilitate quickly once the truth became public. People who had believed Emma's social media lies reached out with apologies and support. My extended family members who had been turned against me called to express their regret and offer help. Gary Patterson at the auto parts store gave me additional responsibilities and a second raise, explaining that my handling of the family crisis had demonstrated maturity and integrity beyond my years. "Most 21-year-olds would have just started throwing punches," Gary said. "You chose justice over revenge, and that tells me everything I need to know about your character." State University reinstated my enrollment for the spring semester and offered additional financial aid after learning about the circumstances that had led to my withdrawal. The admissions counselor was appalled that someone had impersonated my mother to sabotage my education. But the most significant change was in my relationship with Dad. For the first time in years, he stood up to Mom's toxic favoritism and moved into his own apartment across town. "I should have protected you from this years ago," he told me. "I was too weak and too scared of losing my marriage to do what was right for my son." Sarah never returned my calls or messages even after mutual friends explained that Emma's evidence against me had been completely fabricated. I realized our relationship had been more fragile than I thought, if it could be destroyed so easily by lies. Someone who truly loved me would have asked for my side of the story before ending everything. The loss hurt, but it also freed me to understand what I deserved in a relationship. Real love involves trust, communication, and the benefit of the doubt. Sarah had given me none of those things when I needed them most. Mom lost the family home due to legal fees and civil judgments from victims of the theft ring. She was forced to move in with her sister in another state, but she never apologized to me or acknowledged her role in enabling Emma's destructive behavior. Her last words to me were, "I hope you're satisfied with destroying your sister's life." I wasn't satisfied, but I was at peace. Sometimes protecting yourself from toxic people requires accepting that they will never understand the harm they've caused. Mom's inability to take responsibility for her choices was not my burden to carry anymore. 3 months later, I was sitting in my small but comfortable apartment near campus, studying for my engineering midterms, and marveling at how different my life had become. The apartment wasn't fancy, but it was mine, paid for with money I had earned and saved, without anyone stealing from me or demanding I sacrifice my future for their comfort. Dad visited every Sunday, and we had developed the kind of genuine father-son relationship that had been impossible when Mom's favoritism poisoned every family interaction. He was going to physical therapy for his back and had found part-time work at a hardware store that accommodated his limitations. We talked openly about everything, including the mistakes we had both made in enabling Emma's behavior for so long. I used to think keeping peace in the family was more important than doing what was right, Dad told me during one of our conversations. But peace built on lies and favoritism isn't real peace. It's just delayed conflict. My engineering classes were challenging, but incredibly fulfilling. For the first time in my adult life, I could focus completely on learning without worrying about working multiple jobs or managing family crises. My grades reflected my full attention and effort, landing me on the dean's list both semesters. Gary Patterson had promoted me to store manager at the auto parts store, which provided flexible hours around my class schedule and excellent benefits. The additional income allowed me to build a proper emergency fund and even start saving for graduate school. Having financial security that nobody could steal or guilt me into giving away felt like breathing freely for the first time. I started dating Amanda Sinclair, a classmate in my advanced mathematics course, who appreciated my work ethic and integrity. Amanda knew my story and respected the boundaries I had learned to set with toxic people. She understood that real love meant supporting each other's growth rather than demanding sacrifices. "I admire how you handled everything with your family," Amanda told me after we had been dating for 2 months. "A lot of people would have become bitter or cynical after that kind of betrayal. But you chose to use the experience to become stronger and wiser." Emma served 6 months in county jail, followed by 2 years of probation. She was also required to make full restitution to all victims, including repaying the money she had stolen from me with interest. Marcus received a longer sentence due to his leadership role in the theft ring and his prior criminal record. During her time in jail, Emma underwent counseling that apparently helped her understand the psychological roots of her jealousy and entitlement. Upon her release, she wrote me a letter that arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was studying for finals. Davis. The letter began, "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, and I'm not writing this letter expecting any response. I'm writing because I finally understand the full scope of the damage I caused, and I need you to know that I take complete responsibility for my choices." The letter continued for 3 pages, detailing Emma's recognition of how her jealousy had driven her to commit increasingly serious crimes. She acknowledged that she had been planning to frame me for theft charges if her other manipulations failed. She expressed genuine remorse for destroying my relationship with Sarah and sabotaging my college enrollment. "I spent years resenting you for being everything I wasn't," Emma wrote. "Instead of trying to improve myself or find my own path to success, I decided it was easier to tear you down. I thought if I could make you fail, it would prove I wasn't the family disappointment. But I was wrong about everything." The letter concluded with Emma's commitment to rebuilding her life through legitimate means, and her acceptance that I might never want a relationship with her again. "You owe me nothing," she wrote. "I destroyed the trust between us through my own choices, and I understand if you never want to see me again. But I wanted you to know that you were right to call the police that day. I needed to face real consequences for my actions, and I'm grateful you were strong enough to do what our parents wouldn't do." I read Emma's letter 3 times before deciding how to respond. My anger toward her had faded during the months of rebuilding my life, replaced by a mixture of sadness and cautious hope. Emma's crimes had been serious, but her letter suggested she might finally be developing genuine insight and accountability. I wrote back acknowledging her apology, but explaining that rebuilding trust would take years of consistent changed behavior. I wasn't ready for regular contact, but I left the door open for future communication if she continued demonstrating real growth. Mom remained in denial about her role in the family's dysfunction. She sent occasional messages through relatives, usually attempting to guilt me into forgiving and forgetting Emma's mistakes. She never acknowledged that her favoritism had enabled Emma's criminal behavior or that her refusal to believe my innocence had been deeply damaging. I learned to accept that Mom might never develop the self-awareness necessary for genuine reconciliation. Some relationships cannot be repaired because one person refuses to acknowledge the harm they've caused. Protecting my mental health meant accepting this reality without bitterness. 18 months after being kicked out in that storm, I walked across the stage at State University's graduation ceremony to receive my engineering degree. Dad sat in the front row of the auditorium, beaming with pride that felt genuine and uncomplicated. Amanda sat beside him, having become an integral part of my chosen family. During my graduation speech as class valedictorian, I spoke about resilience and the unexpected gifts that can emerge from life's most painful experiences. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing, I told my fellow graduates. Being forced to rebuild your life from scratch teaches you what really matters and who truly deserves a place in your future. After the ceremony, a representative from Morrison Engineering approached me with a job offer. The company specialized in sustainable infrastructure design work that felt meaningful and aligned with my values. The salary was more than I had ever imagined earning, and the position included opportunities for advanced training and graduate school support. As I shook hands with my future employer, I thought about the scared, soaked 21-year-old who had stood in that storm outside his childhood home 18 months earlier. That young man had no idea he was about to embark on a journey that would transform him from a victim of manipulation into a person who understood his own worth. The rain that night had felt like the end of my world, but it had actually been the beginning of my real life. Being cast out by people who didn't value my character had forced me to discover my own strength and build relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I had learned that real family isn't defined by shared DNA, but by shared values. The people who truly loved me had proven themselves through their actions, while those who claimed to love me had shown their true priorities when tested. Standing on the university steps in my graduation cap and gown, surrounded by people who celebrated my achievements rather than resenting them, I felt grateful for that terrible storm. It had washed away the illusions that kept me trapped in a toxic situation and cleared the path for authentic happiness. Emma's betrayal had taught me to recognize manipulation and set healthy boundaries. Mom's favoritism had shown me the difference between conditional and unconditional love. Dad's eventual courage had demonstrated that it's never too late to choose integrity over comfort. Most importantly, I had learned that I didn't need anyone's permission to build a life worth living. The approval I had desperately sought from my family of origin was nothing compared to the self-respect I had earned through my own choices and efforts. Sometimes, the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are when the stakes are highest. Emma's lies had revealed her character, but they had also revealed mine. When tested by false accusations and betrayal, I had chosen truth over convenience and justice over family loyalty. That choice had cost me relationships, but it had gained me something far more valuable: the knowledge that I could trust myself to do what was right, even when it was difficult. The storm that had seemed so devastating at 21 had been the weather that grew me into the man I was meant to become. As I looked toward my future with Amanda, my career in engineering, and my healthy relationship with Dad, I felt nothing but gratitude for the painful experiences that had brought me to this place of peace and possibility. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone close to you betrayed your trust so completely that it forced you to rebuild your entire life? How did you find the strength to choose what was right over what was comfortable? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below about overcoming family drama and toxic relationships. If this story resonated with you, Please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about resilience and personal growth. Share this video with anyone who might need inspiration to stand up for themselves in difficult family situations. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to triumph. Remember that sometimes the worst storms in life are actually clearing the way for better weather ahead. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that you deserve less than genuine love and respect.